Hi, everyone. Welcome to interCHANGE. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us once again. Lots of interesting things to talk about today. If a baby dies while co-sleeping with its mother, should the mother be charged with a crime? We'll talk about a proposal to pretty much blow up the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors and make it a very part-time body of government. And we will also take a few minutes to talk about the Green Bay Packers and the Milwaukee Bucks. So let me introduce everybody again. Longtime newspaper columnist Joel McNally. Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. Denise Callaway, community affairs and public relations professional. And Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. So when I heard the story about the other day about another Milwaukee baby dying while sleeping with its mother, it occurred to me how common this is becoming. It happened 10 times in Milwaukee last year. The other day, it was a 1-week-old baby, and the mother reportedly had been drinking and took a Percocet. The baby apparently suffocated. When this happens, should we feel so bad for the parent, or Kevin, should that parent be charged with a crime?
I think the parent should be charged with a crime. I understand the cultural argument, but that goes out the window when there's booze and drugs involved. And I have an extreme amount of sympathy. Yes, the parents probably feel horrible. Of the loss of a child, I cannot comprehend what that must be like. But I have greater sympathy for the dead child. These are preventable, and you can give out all the free cribs you want. You can have all the Journal-Sentinel articles about this you want. You can do all the public service announcements on the radio you want. These will continue to happen. This is an ugly, tragic pattern that is happening in Milwaukee. Doesn't seem to be happening anywhere else. And I think to get the message across, to prevent these in the future, you must criminally charge these people, because you just do not go to bed with your infant boozed up, drugged up, smother them, kill them, and then get a free pass.
Denise, we're going to hear again this week, and we're going to hear the next time it happens, oh, we need more education. We have to educate the parents that you shouldn't sleep with your child. Does anybody in America not know that right now?
Well, obviously some people do, because these incidents continue to happen. Yes, there are some cultural reasons why in some communities it is very much accepted as very natural and very normal for a child to sleep with its mother. But that doesn't mean that we don't take the time and make every effort to make sure that folks are aware of the dangers. And the reason that we have to do that is not everybody reads the Journal-Sentinel and is looking at the editorials or the series that it has there. We have to look at different ways to communicate the dangers of co-sleeping to parents. At the end of the day, it's the parent who's going to make that decision about whether or not, in their mind, for a variety of different reasons, that's something that's acceptable to them. But we have to make sure that people know about the dangers. And we also have to make sure that people know that they can take cribs home. The city has a wonderful program now that makes these pack-and-play cribs, these small portable cribs, available to families if they don't have it. I think what we probably need to do is, now you can't leave the hospital with your newborn unless you have a child safety seat. We need to make sure, I think, that parents have to have some kind of proof that they have a separate bed, a crib, or one of these small portable cribs for their child before that child gets to leave the hospital with them. But we've got to do more, because clearly what we're doing is not working.
Is it time for society to not say, oh, we're so sorry that your baby died, but when this happens, you killed your baby?
No, and this is a horrible idea, to charge people criminally for being poor and ignorant sometimes. Yes, it's a horrible thing that happened, but as Denise said, there are vast numbers of people living in desperate circumstances who don't read all these news stories and aren't aware of these things that we are assuming everyone knows because we know, and are living in desperate circumstances. Yeah, there's overcrowded. There are several families in a room sometimes, and there are no cribs, and they don't know that they can get free cribs, and they're struggling to survive. And you're absolutely true. Some of these people have other dysfunctional problems, whether it's alcohol or drugs or what. And in fact, so do wealthy people and middle-class people and people living in other communities. When we say this is only happening in Milwaukee, of course that's not true. But that's where we're reading about it right now because the Journal-Sentinel has this crusade. But that just makes it more important that we do public education every way possible. And we have to find some new ways to communicate. I think this idea of when you leave the hospital with a child is a terrific idea. And there has to be other interventions that reach people who aren't reachable otherwise. Some of these people are working 2 or 3 jobs, and they've got kids going off in every different direction that they have to get around the community without any transportation, and with public transportation being eliminated more all the time. There are people in desperate circumstances, and the last thing we need to do is criminalize people for living in desperate circumstances when these tragic things happen. We definitely need to intervene any way possible, but being punitive, hasn't worked in a vast number of problems we have. We have to reach people other ways.
I don't mean to sound cold, but are we being apologetic?
No, in far too many ways, I think we're being realist and pragmatic. If you stop the education because you feel hopeless that it's not working, imagine how many more might occur simply because we have newborns that are born to inexperienced moms every day. We have moms who could have better training, better parenting skills, and I think we have to be vigilant in continuing to provide that. I think every case deserves to be looked at on its own, though, in terms of the merits, because at what point do you really draw the line and say this was so intentional, so preventable, that there ought to carry with it some penalty? And clearly, the death of a child is just a humongous penalty in and of itself. But negligence carries with it penalties even when the child remains alive. And so in this instance, I say you look at every case, you look at how severe the negligence was, and then you make a determination as to whether or not it should carry with it some
The
penalty.
Journal-Sentinel editorial board, which I'm not always in agreement with, made an interesting case, a strong case this week when it made the comparison between, say, a parent who gets into a car and is intoxicated with a child, gets into an accident, and as a result of the accident, the child dies. It's not even a matter of debate. Charges are going to be filed, and that person is going to be going away for some time. Then why not here? Why not here when you didn't intend to smother your child, but you got into the bed and you were intoxicated or you were drug ingested? It seems to me that if you're going to do it in that case, it certainly makes sense to do it in these co-sleeping cases.
All right, shifting gears, talking about politics. The state legislature is expected to act soon on a proposal which could lead to big changes for the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors. If the voters say okay to a referendum, the 18 supervisors would go from full-time $50,000 a year to part-time, making just about $15,000 a year. The main sponsor is a new state legislator who had been a Milwaukee County supervisor before. He says quite simply that it shouldn't be a full-time job, that there's not enough work to do, but there's some blowback going on right now.
There's plenty. It's a complicated situation because in a lot of ways the county board kind of brought this on themselves, I believe, with what happened when Scott Walker was county executive. He didn't run the county. The county board ran the county. Scott Walker was happy to introduce a budget every year that wouldn't run the county, but it had no tax increases. And so the county board had to take responsibility for coming up with a budget that ran the county, that funded the services that Milwaukee County had to offer. Chris Abley comes in. He wants to run the county. He wants to be the county executive. He wants to change it structurally. He wants to make changes that will make it work better. And oddly, it was kind of weird. He comes up with an idea to merge some of the services of the city and the county to save money, to have the police department, which is now called into our parks because David Clark isn't really patrolling them, take over the policing of the parks, and it would save money. And the county board, I don't know why, I think because it was announced without them being present or something, chose not to save money and not to start merging services that make sense to merge. And apparently the county board chair right now wants to run for county executive her entire term, until the office comes up, for election again. So now you got Chris Abele, a Democrat, this supervisor who didn't get along with the board when he was on the board. Joe Sanfilippo, and Republicans in the legislature that can do anything they want, and the Greater Milwaukee Committee, all the rich white guys that run everything, are all together in what is like a just out of thin air, well-oiled plot to make this happen. I believe people will vote for it.
Denise, a friend of mine said, who doesn't like politicians to begin with, said they should make the state legislators all part-time too.
Yeah.
Well, they are part-time. I just want to chime in on that. The state legislators are paid comparable to the county board of supervisors. They represent a comparable number of people. In fact, county board reps represent slightly more people than state legislators. In fact, the legislators, if you add the per diem to it, get paid more, and they are both part-time representatives. You get more staff as a state representative than the county board of supervisors do. In fact, it's only been in recent memory in the last few years that board staff have gone from being one part-time to one full-time member. So this whole thing is really much ado about nothing. It's not going to make the members of the county board more efficient. It's not going to save any money. In fact, the referendum will probably cost far more money to get the votes, to get the voters to have some discussion around this. And I'm not against that. If it were advisory, fine. But this is a binding referendum that's all about spite. It has absolutely nothing to do with efficiency or fiscal responsibility.
I think the real challenge here is it's an issue of, I think for many people, home rule. Is it up to the state legislature to make that decision about this is what we want Milwaukee County residents to vote on, that we think they need to consider when it comes to the county board, the size of the county board, in essence, how county government is run? Is that their call, or is that the call of local taxpayers? And I think that local taxpayers had the opportunity to have their voices heard if they would have supported Sanfilippo's idea and his suggestion when he was a county supervisor, and there was not that support for it. I agree that I think if it comes to a referendum, people like the idea of less government, so they're going to vote to support that. I think the problem is, and what we don't know is, from any kind of objective source, because you clearly have the county board of supervisors that feels, hey, we should continue the way we're doing. This is not the state's business, but out. And a contingent of folks in the state and some people here in the city of Milwaukee who feel we do need to make this change. The problem is, as taxpayers, as voters, we don't have any objective evidence as to what one idea, the current structure or the other structure, would really mean. What's that difference? You might save money, but what's the outcome on that? What is the outcome on that?
Here's another dangerous thing, though. It's not just about the size of the board or whether full-time or part-time. There are parts of this legislation which include limiting the tax that the county board can pass.
Right. That's the problem.
Forever in the future, without knowing what the needs of the county are, without that is like it's what Scott Walker's plan always was.
And
Do you worry at all about the kind of county supervisor you would get?
No, heavens no. Come on. These are part-timers that are getting paid a full-time salary. They don't get a lot of phone calls. Their staff person does all the work. In 71 out of 72 counties in the state, we get by with part-time county boards. Los Angeles County has five county board members out there in Los Angeles County. And of course the county board members are apoplectic because they want to keep their $50,000. They want to keep their $50,000 salary for a $9,000 a year job. They don't do that much.
And neither do legislators. Neither do state assemblymen. No, of course we're not, because we're busy beating up on county supervisors in the one county in the state where
what do they do? They do. I'll tell you what they do. They manage
still have responsibilities. Yes, they do. And that's their responsibility. They still have responsibility.
On a part-time basis.
Well, it is a part-time. No one's arguing that it's part-time. But if you're going to be fair about this, why not say then that those part-time jobs at the state legislature, and
I'd love to have that argument someday on this program. But we're talking about this proposal and the county board. We eliminated general assistance a long time ago. They got rid of the county hospital, Doyne Hospital. The state took over foster care system. The state took over the welfare system. There's less for these guys to do. All they do is bicker with the county executive. And we will
not ruling by fiat. He can't.
And we will save a lot of money, $6.5 million a year. And yes, it is about local control.
Where does the $6.5 million figure come from?
Read your newspaper.
Okay? I have read my newspaper, and I saw 800,000 in there.
And the first time I've ever heard that recommended.
So you're going to save a lot of money, okay? And it is about local control, because all the state legislature will do if they approve this bill is say, all right, Milwaukee County voters, you figure it out. And my county supervisor, Mark Borkowski, when he was interviewed by Channel 12's Kent Wainscott the other day, had, I believe, the soundbite of the year, even though it is only early January. He said, wow, if this goes to binding referendum, we're toast. And that's because the public gets it.
No,
they know they don't need.
Will vote against
a full-time county board. And this is baloney too. That only rich people will run for the office? Come on. Apparently, they're doing it okay in the other 71 counties in the state.
Well, I think, again, we don't have enough information to make an informed decision. And Kevin, it's not as if the legislation doesn't say, okay, Milwaukee County, you go figure this out. It's very prescriptive as to what happens. I think that's a huge difference between saying your county board should be part-time, citizens figure it out. This is laying out exactly at the state level what a local, another body of government should do.
Including what the taxes should be.
Well, the state legislature created county government, and let me tell you something. This goes.
They can take it away.
This goes to no. The people. The people will decide that. And if it's on the ballot in April, it wins 80-20. I'm telling you that right now.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying it is not a good way for us to have that kind of a discussion as a community about what the county board should look like. Should there be some kind of salary limitations on this part-time board, and should there be limitations on what it can do? That is not, in Madison, is not a good place for us to have a discussion about what needs to happen in Milwaukee County.
All right, let's take the last few minutes to talk about sports. The Bucks this week pretty much fired their coach, Skiles, even though they said, oh, it was a mutual agreement, but you know he was fired. And the Green Bay Packers have a huge game tomorrow. Bucks, Packers, what do you think?
Smart move on the part of the Bucks. I think that they needed to wake the team up. Skiles was maybe far too much of a disciplinarian for him, but they tried him for several years, and he did move the team to where they needed to move. At least they made an adjustment that I think is going to work and get them into the playoffs this season. Packers, if they win tomorrow, they go all the way. And I guess that's how I feel about it. San Francisco, I think, is their biggest challenge. And as long as they've got a healthy team on the field, they certainly got the spirit to want to go out and perform well. I think it's going to happen.
The Bucks have a playoff caliber team, and they weren't playing like one. And I think it was because of the difference in personalities and styles. The team didn't like Skiles. Skiles didn't like the team. It's best, even though it's so early, part your ways and move on. The Packers, I worry about this. If they can protect for Aaron Rodgers, they have a very solid shot of winning, but that's really one of the best defenses in football, and you're on the road, so I worry a lot.
You had to be a little nervous today when you read the stories that Rodgers might have a touch of the flu.
Yeah, or, it's a touch of flu, it's a sinus problem, it's,
Get out there and play.
He's going to play. He's going to do a great job. It was interesting when he was drafted by the Packers and passed up by the 49ers. When he was interviewed on ESPN on draft night, they asked him, are you sorry that you're not a 49er? And he said, or you weren't picked by the 49ers, and he said, I'm not as sorry as the 49ers are going to be one day. So we'll have to see if that holds true. But I think Rodgers is going to be fine. I think the main thing that a lot of people are going to be watching for at the beginning of the game is whether or not Donald Driver suits up and he's not standing on the sidelines.
Oh,
I mean, this guy, I know, people will go
Packer
crazy.
fans will be disappointed then because all indications are he's not going to play.
Well, now there is an indication that he's going to suit up for special teams. So let's
he
see
won't
what
get in
happens on
because he
special
doesn't
teams.
play special teams, so he won't get in.
He has said he's open to that. They've talked about, there's been some talk about him as a possibility of as a backup for punt returns and kick returns. Let's see what happens.
But come on, Packer backers here.
I got to say one word. I got to say one word about Scott Skiles. Got to say one word about Skiles.
All right, but then let me respond to the
It was a
Packer thing.
mistake when they hired him when they hired him.
No,
It absolutely was. It absolutely was. It was not a good match. Skiles is very much a disciplinarian, and I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that his style clearly was not going to match what has traditionally been kind of the feeling of this team. That this is a team that has historically not needed somebody to come in and beat up the members on the team to get them to do what needs to be done. I think it was a mistake from the beginning. Glad to see that he's gone. Let's keep going.
Real quick about Donald Driver, very quickly. Come on, Packer fans. Are you more concerned about Donald Driver's feelings or winning the game?
But Kevin, it's not like he's a guy who doesn't have any talent.
He's not as good as he used to.
It doesn't mean he doesn't have talent.
We've got to give Joel time. He wants to talk about Brent Musburger.
Don't we all?
Wow! Look at her.
Let me take a bite out of this conversation, but that's another story.
Skiles, the move surprised me. Just because I didn't see it coming. Apparently the Journal-Sentinel didn't either because they couldn't tell us what really happened for a couple of days. But it was just a couple of years ago that Skiles was exactly the right guy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I agree that in this past, I haven't been able to understand some of his moves this year or late last year where people would just be hung out to dry or they disappear totally and you didn't know why and they just stop playing, or you don't play Drew Gooden when you have him. I mean, why have him? And
Bogut didn't like him.
Well, but Bogut, we came out okay with Bogut with Monte Ellis. Actually, absolutely. The Packers, like I said last week, we win until we lose, so I can't go wrong on that.
How can you argue with that? That is just too brilliant.
But I absolutely believe this team is in good shape for the playoffs.
I'm worried about
all the receivers, some good running, and we'll sack them.
Yeah, Candlestick is not in its greatest shape. That might be our biggest problem.
All right, we move on. Well, President Obama announced more choices this week for his second-term cabinet. Some of his picks are expected to be confirmed very easily, but others have already run into some heavy opposition. Rick Horowitz has his eye on one nominee and one especially troubling line of attack. Rick.
Hi, my name is Rick Horowitz, and I'm an anti-Semite. At least I'm an anti-Semite if you judge me the same way some people are judging Chuck Hagel. But first, a quick quiz. Do we have any Catholics out there? Oh, good. Okay, here's my question for you. Do you agree with the Pope? You look a little confused. Do I agree with the Pope about what? Some of you may even be wondering, agree with which Pope? There have been a bunch of them. Good questions. But say, just for argument's sake, you disagreed with some Pope or another on something or another. Would that make you anti-Catholic? Of course not. And the Pope is your religion's top guy. Plus, he's got that whole infallibility thing working for him. Whereas this guy, he's simply a politician. Not even an American politician, an Israeli politician. His name is Benjamin Netanyahu. Right now, he's Israel's prime minister. I'm not a big fan. That's right, even though he's the prime minister of Israel and I'm Jewish, I'm not a big fan of some of his policies on the occupied territories, the settlements, the Palestinians. I'm hardly alone. Plenty of American Jews aren't fans of those policies. Does that mean we're anti-Semitic? Or could it mean we don't think those policies are in America's best interests? Or even in Israel's best interests, but that's another matter. Chuck Hagel, meanwhile, Chuck Hagel seems to look at it the same way back when he was a U.S. Senator and presumably if he becomes our new Defense Secretary. What kinds of policies in the Middle East are in America's best interests? which might not always track dot for dot with what policies does some particular Israeli government want to pursue. I'm fine with that, but apparently it's got some folks upset. Some other American Jews, I mean. They don't like Chuck Hagel's attitude. They don't think he's properly deferential to the Israeli government. They also don't like his tone. See, he once referred in an interview to the Jewish lobby and how much influence some of those organizations can have in Washington when they gear up for a fight. So to make Chuck Hagel pay for that terrible insult for uttering such a complete and total falsehood, some of those organizations have been gearing up to use their influence in Washington to defeat him. That'll show him, even if they have to smear him, even if they have to call him an anti-Semite. You know, just like me.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Stay warm. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.